Mercedes has made a shocking start to the 2024 season and sit fourth in the Constructors' Championship, whilst it is the worst start to a campaign for Lewis Hamilton in his 18-year F1 career. Team boss Toto Wolff was left struggling to see the positives after both Mercedes drivers retired from the Australian Grand Prix, with the team boss admitting that the outfit's continued problems have left him wanting to punch himself on the nose. The team endured a challenging weekend in Australia, which culminated in a disastrous outcome on race day, where Hamilton recorded a DNF following a mechanical issue on lap 17. George Russell later crashed out of the running on the penultimate lap as he tried to chase Fernando Alonso for P6, with Alonso subsequently being handed a 20-second penalty for potentially dangerous driving in the moments before the accident. While Mercedes have endured a tough 2 years in the sport since the introduction of ground effect regulations in 2022, the Brackley-based squad appeared more optimistic prior to 2024 after opting to change the concept of the car. However, after finishing in second place in last year's Constructors' standings, the team now seemed to have slipped further back in their bid to close the gap to Red Bull. Mercedes P4 in the Constructors' standings currently, a full 71 points behind Red Bull after 3 races. The 2022 Challenger was plagued by porpoising and bouncing, while its W14 successor drew complaints from Hamilton and Russell over rear-end handling instability. That prompted Mercedes to change concept for 2024, fully abandoning a size 0 side pod architecture in the hope of developing a platform that was more predictable and consistent. But the new W15 has also proved temperamental. Wolff believes this now points to the team's wind tunnel findings not matching how the car behaves on track. When I look at the positives, I think we took many potential root causes out of the equation. We weren't sure about our suspension. We weren't sure about the stiffness of our gearbox carrier. We had a vibrating steering rack. All of those things have disappeared. It is not a single person that says, I would interpret that data in this way. And because of dogmatism, we're not making any progress. I don't see dogmatism. I see an open environment where people share, where people take themselves by the nose and say, maybe in my area, we are making mistakes. As Hamilton stood in the media pen in Melbourne, he was fully aware how differently things had turned out. He'd flown to the other side of the world to qualify 11th and complete 15 laps on race day. Hamilton has taken a podium in one of the first 3 races of the year in every season since his F1 debut in 2007, apart from 2009 when he had a disqualification, 6th and 7th for McLaren. It's the worst start to a season I've ever had. It's worse than 2009. It's tough on the spirit for everyone in the team when so much work has been going on over the winter. You come in excited, driven, and motivated, with the mindset you're going to be fighting for wins, then that's not the case. Then you think, okay, maybe second or third, and that's not the case. And it cascades a bit further down, and you go through the motions. It's challenging. I continue to be inspired by the people I've worked with and continue to put in the effort and show up. That's the most important thing. Mercedes thought it was in Ferrari's ballpark at the season opener in Bahrain, only to be stymied by a cooling issue that cost both cars a considerable amount of time. After Sainz's win on Sunday, the gap looks gigantic. Wolff admitted the start to this season had been brutally painful in light of the Australia result. No matter how optimistic he wanted to feel about the future, digesting neither car getting to the checkered flag was tough. I would be lying if I would say at any moment, I feel positive about the situation and optimistic. But you just need to overcome the negative thoughts and say, we will turn this around. Today it feels very, very brutal. After finishing in second place in last year's Constructors' standings, the team now seem to have slipped further back in their bid to close the gap to Red Bull. Mercedes P4 in the Constructors' standings currently, a full 71 points behind Red Bull after 3 races. We started this season in the belief that this car is better than it was last year. Then you look at last year in Australia, where Leclerc crashed out and Sainz was 4th but relegated to outside of the top 10 because of the penalty. But on the road, he was 4th. McLaren was 17th, 18th, 19th, and now they are 40 seconds ahead of us. Obviously, on one side, I want to punch myself on the nose. On the other side, it is also a testimony that when you get things right, you can turn it around pretty quickly, and we've just got to continue to believe. But at the moment, it's a very tough time. Wolff believes that the issue for the team is around understanding their car rather than organizational, meaning that he continues to believe he is the right person for the role of team principal. As a co-owner of this business, I need to make sure that my contribution is positive and creative. So I would be the first one to say, if somebody has a better idea, tell me, because I'm interested to turn this team around as quickly as possible. And I'll happily give my input and see what that would be, or who that could be. We have a physics problem, not a philosophical or organizational problem, because we haven't swallowed a dumb pill since 2021. It's just we don't understand some of the behaviors of the car that in the past we would have always understood. I look myself in the mirror every single day about everything I do, and if I believe that I should ask the manager question or the trainer question, I think it's a fair question, but it's not what I feel at the moment that I should do. With 21 races to go, Hamilton and Mercedes have plenty of opportunities to enjoy more success together. The challenge now is how they define that success, and how much further they'll have to temper their aspirations for this swan song campaign. The more we race, the more we realize how down in the dumps Mercedes is, and the more we realize how correct Hamilton was to make a switch to Ferrari. Every passing weekend, we see Mercedes sink further into the pit they dug up for themselves by their interpretation of the 2022 regulations. The most concerning factor is that this is the third year under unchanged regulations, and still the team back in Brackley is in the dark. They still can't pinpoint the problem areas and clearly solve them. This is exactly in a post-race interview, Hamilton couldn't help but laugh at his misery, proving to the experts on the F1 Checkered Flag podcast that Hamilton has written this year off and is already halfway to Ferrari. The Australian GP would have been extremely painful if Hamilton was tied down with a contract. Lucky for him, it'll be someone else's problem from next year, and he had a front row seat to his future team securing an incredible 1-2 in Albert Park. However, this inclination toward Ferrari is not newfound because the Brit saw the Italian team's progress well in advance. Months before aligning himself with Ferrari and painting his future red, Hamilton could also see the upward trajectory the Italian team was on. He saw glimpses of it in 2023, and we saw it too, toward the end of the last campaign. Sure, they could only secure one win. However, Ferrari is catching up, and Hamilton saw that. Hamilton has not won a race since December 2021 and has also had just one pole position in the last 2 years. He is yet to beat Russell in qualifying or the race so far this year, underlining his difficult start to the season. He thinks it's important to focus on the bigger picture despite frustration about things that he can't control. Surprisingly, I feel pretty good. I'm trying to keep things in perspective. It could be so much worse. I really enjoyed my time in Australia, and I'm still enjoying working with the team. Of course, I would love to be fighting for wins and actually finishing races. It's never great to end a race this way. But what I know is, we will bounce back and eventually get there. We just have to continue to push.